Welcome to the Brain Picker Pro Show, live from Lake Wiley, South Carolina. I'm Larry Goins. I really appreciate you guys watching. As you know, every week we bring on a different rock star in real estate. And this week is a great guy. He's a mover and a shaker. And I mean, this guy is way up here in what he's doing. And he currently lives in Cleveland, Ohio, one of my favorite places, the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've been there many times. And my good friend, John Carney. What's going on, buddy?
How you doing, Larry? Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm good. How you been?
Pretty good.
Awesome. So thanks for being on. Why don't you start out and tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, sure. I'm back in Cleveland, Ohio. I was born and raised here, Larry, but when I graduated from college, I went to Miami of Ohio. I headed west. I was out in Colorado for 12 years. I met a lady who was from Australia, and as things would have happened in our life, I ended up living in Melbourne for 7 years. We got married, had children. I was in real estate and development down there, and I came back in June of 2016 to work on some real estate development projects and multifamily in my father and his partner's business. They were pioneers in the downtown Cleveland multifamily space. And actually through the 90s, the landmark companies were part of the development of the warehouse district here. And, they kind of were the spark that brought people out of the suburbs and made living in loft apartments cool again. So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I love that. So let's go way back. How did you get started in real estate? What got you cranked up about real estate?
Well, my first job we'll call it in the family business, right? My grandfather and his brother owned some shopping centers on the west side of Cleveland, and my uncle managed them. So at like 13 or 14, I would spend the mornings on my summer vacation, filling in potholes with asphalt, picking up cigarette butts in the parking lot, painting fences, pulling weeds, all the glamorous stuff, right?
Right.
But it's I don't think anyone ever forgets their first work experience, and bad language and power tools. It was pretty fun for a 14-year-old. But I did that for a number of summers, and then in college. They were in the downtown Cleveland space, and I was able to get into the labor union, and I carried bricks, and I really and knocked down walls, and really got to see the development side of real estate, from the other side of the coin, and that's sort of how my father and his brother had been raised. Back when my grandfather was digging basements, right? They were doing the same thing. So that's sort of where the seed was planted. And, there's a lot of attorneys in our family, and, extending my school years to sit in a classroom in my 20s wasn't my thing. Nothing against attorneys, but wasn't.
Right. I hear you, man. I'm the same way. I'm not even a college graduate. I just graduated high school, and that was it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you got the fire in you, real estate is for anybody that, it has some motivation behind them, I think.
But you know what? Most people, I read something a while back, most people who have a college degree are working for someone who doesn't. Right?
That's an interesting statistic.
It is. It really is. So you really went straight to, jumping into commercial and multifamily type stuff, strip centers. Do you do any single family, or did you just go straight on in and you've never looked back?
Well, I didn't really go straight into the family business. We'll call it that at all.
Right.
After school, I worked on a project back in Cleveland. I was pre-leasing in one of the buildings that we still own and operate. But I moved out to Colorado, and I was out in the high country in a ski town working, a handful of jobs to live that dream. We can fast forward to my early 30s, where I met a lady from Australia. As our life plan evolved, I suppose, I ended up moving to Melbourne with her in 2009.
Right.
And that was, our market was tanking, getting worse. And I ended up in Melbourne, which is, if people aren't familiar with Melbourne, Australia, a very modern, livable city. They boast to be the world's most livable city, but to where I was in a market with outrageous prices and real estate was climbing, right? Completely opposite world, opposite end of the world, completely opposite experience. And
Wow.
and when I was living there, I took my knowledge and expertise in the U.S. market and spun that into a business. I launched a company called America Property Source, and we enabled Australians to safely invest in U.S. single family homes and small multifamily. And our market of choice was Phoenix. And that
Oh,
was all based around relationships and the team of people that I had on the ground there that I knew and trusted. And, that was my, jumping in the deep end, Larry. I started a company in a foreign country, which had its own learning curve. And then, we were placing cash only, at that time into for a foreign national, they had to be 100% cash acquisitions in a foreign country. So,
wow.
um, it was great because everyone did well. And that may have sounded easy because of the time, but it was really, a focus on the work we did as a business, myself and my partners, establishing an awesome team of people that we trusted and who were good at real estate to service our clients on the other side of the world. So that was a fun experience, man. I mean, and then when I moved back to the States, I'd had some of my own investments, personal investments under my belt. I did some development work in Australia with some partners. And, here I am back, in a bigger game, but had the experience to get there by incrementally making sure each deal I was participating in got bigger and bigger along the way.
That's great, man. So it sounds like in Australia, you were selling turnkey properties to people in Australia, but the turnkey properties were in Phoenix. Is that right?
Yeah, we were selling properties before turnkey was a thing. I mean, like we had the guy, our partner on the ground, his name was John Williams, and his team. I mean, they were putting together funds and buying a lot of single family homes and helping. He was in wholesale, and there was a lot of inventory back 2010, 11, 12, and we had to have clients on the other side of the world commit to buying something in cash with a quick close,
Right.
right? Like I'd send them an email and then I'd call them and say, "This is it. This is what you've been looking for," and they would buy it. And I had to make sure that when they got on a plane and flew over there, I was delivering everything that they were expecting. So in order to be successful, we we set up tours. People would fly over there with already we'd set up their LLC and their foreign exchange and their bank accounts and get them in a position to buy. Some people would elect to go over there and get in a car with our team on the ground, and then they'd say, "Yeah, I'll have that one. I'll have this one." And but other people elected to never travel to America, and we're just buying off of our Mailchimp
Right, right.
blast.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's great. It's amazing that people will buy from Australia properties in the States and never haven't done it before. But when real estate's hot, it's hot and everybody wants a piece, right?
Well, that's true. And the Australians love real, like they call it property. I'm gonna end up inevitably talking in Aussie property language, right? But so that's the water cooler conversation in Australia. Everyone's got a story of if they haven't made a fortune on real estate, their brother, sister, friend, cousin has, right?
Wow.
And so if you want to buy an investment property today, you live in Victoria, that's the state, and you got Melbourne, the big capital city. You're probably looking at about an hour out of town. You're probably looking at an entry level property at I don't know, maybe $350 to $400,000,
Right.
and
Wow.
you have to
That's a
make
lot.
yeah, and so they call it negative gearing. So if you're investing in that property, if you're going to be in a single family home business, you have to most people have to feed that until they get their tax return, and then they kind of get their profit once a year. So I mean, it's real tight. There's a real art and science to it,
Wow.
and because prices kept escalating, and the Aussie dollar against the US dollar kept becoming more and more attractive.
Sure.
My timing was perfect. And just to kind of give you an example, I would say that the clients I had that engaged their team and actually paid attention to their portfolio, because not
Right.
everybody did, um, you know, they all doubled it plus their, some of them two times the value of their initial outlay.
Wow.
We were, these were, I charged a fee on the front end to provide a service. They were buying 40, 50, $60,000 properties in central Phoenix, right? B plus, C plus, or B minus, C plus areas. But
That was a long time ago.
yeah, and you know, you look at them now at 150 grand plus.
Right.
Um, there was a time when during the sweet spot where our clients were using a foreign exchange service that we had. They were trading their Australian dollars. It went from like 87 cents when we started all the way up to $1.08. And now the Aussie dollars dropped down to say like eight, you know, high 70s,
Right.
somewhere in there. I mean, some people have made a 30% return on their currency alone.
Right.
Not to mention, you know, 1.5 times capital growth on their investments.
That's
It,
huge.
it was it was a great way. It was a great way to for me to provide a great service, you know, and learn a lot. So
That's awesome, man. What do you see the biggest difference between Australian real estate and US real estate?
at the end of the day, it's just numbers, really. I mean, I think that there's ways in Australia to get into the market and do some off-market and creative deals. It's
Right.
not as popular there. The
Right.
banks have more of a stranglehold on you. You can't just go into foreclosure and walk
Okay.
away. I used to joke that they'll follow you to the grave and then dig you up and you know, take your watch.
Wow.
Whether that's true or not, that's just how I like to think about it. But there's full recourse for everyone for everything, and it's a smaller country, right? The population of Australia is 22 million people, sort of in
Right.
like Texas. You know, Texas has oil, they have minerals, but it's when you think about it like that, they've got, you know, only a handful of banks that control the market, and you know, it's a math game. So the main difference is math, strategy, and then the strategy, because the result's the same. People want to have assets, income follows assets.
Right.
You want to create that passive cash flow,
Right.
and have more financial freedom and time freedom to do what they want. That's what. So there is really that differences in the math and the strategy. You need a little bit more. The perception is you need a little bit more money to get started there.
Right.
That's also the perception here in America. You're in this game and you know how it's played, and you know, people can get into real estate, can start out with very little money or no money down if they take the time to learn strategies, recruit a team, and you know, the sky's the limit, really.
Exactly. Exactly. So it sounds very similar to Canada from what I hear, where there's only a few major banks that control everything. And, you know, most people there have good credit, you know, because the banks will follow you, you know? So it sounds very similar.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know much about Canada other than at the same time we were sending a lot of Australians into the Phoenix market. There was a lot of Canadians coming into the Phoenix market, right? There was a lot of
Oh,
people
okay.
everywhere coming in, but um, yeah, each country is different. You know, one of the things that I liked when people ask me about how to get started, I'm always going to go back to the team of people you recruit,
Right.
and being in a different country. And I had to ask a lot of questions, and I had to ask a lot of people for help just to get America Property Source registered. To, you know, there's a lot of work that had to be done before I closed my first deal and received
Right.
a paycheck, right? And you know, if you're willing to go out and spend the time surrounding yourself with good people, um, and you have a plan and like that, I believe that you can get going, right? Would you not agree? What I don't want to turn it around and interview.
Oh
You know
no,
what I mean?
absolutely, absolutely. I do agree. I do agree.
Um, so that's it. The main difference is the dollar sign, and then but you need the same team players you need here. You need a good accountant that loves real estate, especially in Australia, because there's a lot of nuances in their tax code, especially as it relates to real estate. You probably need a good solicitor, right, to look over your documents, and a
Right.
good solicitor can act as your title agent there, or they have a conveyancer. They don't necessarily have the same title company we have up here in the north. I know that.
Right.
Are you a lawyer state, South Carolina?
Yes. Yeah. In North and South Carolina, we typically use lawyers.
Yeah.
Attorneys.
So very similar in that regard. You know, you've got to have a good insurance guy
Just
that
different name.
different name, just semantics, and so on and so forth. So I mean, you have a good team of people, and then when I got into real estate in Australia, it was really surrounding myself with the same people. And I did a couple development sites, and I had a startup company. I ran a startup company over there. I was renting an apartment in Melbourne, and I didn't have any fixed assets in Australia, and
Right.
we didn't have anything to leverage off of. All my
Right.
assets were held in the U.S. So I had a partner who also who was a developer who I approached, and he ran his company had I had a lending. He was a mortgage broker. I was a part of his development company and real estate services company. And
Right.
the agreement was if I found the project and drove it, he'd, check in and make sure that it was on track and provide the financing.
That's
And
great.
we
So,
partnered with the builder. I still had to bring some cash over the right way, right through the proper channels, and bring money over to Australia that I had access to in the States, but
right.
was able to accomplish this through teamwork and, you know, asking a lot of questions.
You know what, John? You've mentioned your team multiple times, and you actually wrote a book called "Real Estate is a Team Sport." Tell us why that is so important.
Well, we'll go back to America Property Source, right? So I had clients that I had this experience where I was so intimately involved in it, in sourcing and the closing of all these transactions. I also
Right.
became very intimately involved in the property management by default. I didn't want anybody to fail. And as the company grew and the client list grew and the transaction volume grew, um, it came back to me that the people who were struggling, the clients that were struggling, just were not engaging with their team in America. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, we provided just A players, right? All the resources you could ever need to be successful from afar were in place. They're just a phone call away or an
Right.
email away, a Skype call away. I mean, it was not, in my opinion, something that was, but not everyone had that mentality. They thought that they looked at real estate more like buying shares or stocks, right? And they were just buy it, set it, forget, wait until it appreciates, and then I'm going to sell it and move on,
Right.
right? That's just not a reality. So we had some people that weren't engaging with their property managers. They weren't checking in on their bank accounts, and they were struggling. And we put a lot of time and effort and energy and money into making sure that when something kind of went sideways, it got corrected. Right? And what I learned from that was my partners on the ground were awesome. They didn't have to do this. They wanted their partners in Australia to be successful. So I mean, it
Right.
was really a tribute to them. They were going out and putting out fires for people they hadn't even met. And these were guys that were generally wholesalers too. Like they weren't necessarily like, they were just good people.
They
And
weren't corporate.
yeah, and they had their teams, and they said, sure, we'll swing by here and fix the swimming pool, or we'll do this for you, and we'll do that for you. And we like this guy's but for properties, but like, let's make sure that this doesn't happen to, the other three in his portfolio. So we had this learning experience where the book came out of it's written for an Australia, living in Australia, because I could give it to people and say, this is how you would go about doing this in your country. I've done it in your country. I've done it in my country. These are my experiences. And if you engage your team, there is absolutely no limit to what you'll be able to achieve.
That's awesome, man. One of the biggest things I see people have struggles with, other than marketing to get a deal, is how do you find a team if you're virtual investing, right? How do you build that team? How do you build your boots on the ground and your attorneys, your realtors, your bird dogs, and that sort of thing, your buyers list, all that stuff. So I'm really glad you wrote that book. Where can people get a copy of that book?
It's on Amazon. If anyone wants to shoot me an email, to my email address, which is jc@johncarneyonline.com. We'll post them a copy, mail it to you. When you get me speaking in Australia mode, I just my vocabulary, and I live with an Aussie, right? Like
There you go.
we're always making fun of each other the way we pronounce things.
That's great. That's great. So tell us about the cash flow multiplier. You've got a 5-step method for real estate investing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, sure. I'm going to have to pull this up.
Sure.
It's like this. We always used to start with people on a phone call. Larry, if you came in and said, John, I've got, all this money, just sold my business. I want to buy U.S. property. I want to buy 5 properties, $100,000 each in cash. I'd say that's great.
Right.
Let's understand what the end goal is here. I'm not a financial advisor, but I want to understand, what's your reason for wanting to do this?
Right.
And that's what I mean by step 1. Discover your reason why you want to do this. And I got a phone call over the summer from a gentleman who was referred to me through my my Forex account manager. Right, he managed all the currency trades for my clients. And this guy has a son. I'm just going to give an example, a real life example. He said, I want to buy $1 million worth of property. And I want to buy it in Vegas, and I'm ready to come over and do it now. And it's like, all right, but why do you want to do this? And he wanted to do this because he had a son who was in high school playing basketball, was most likely going to be recruited to a U.S. university, a college. And he wanted to start now so that when his son, finally had a degree and moved back to Australia, he'd have real estate knowledge and experience, and he'd have some assets he could sell or leverage to help his son buy a home, since the property values in Australia seem to be going through the roof right now, where it's completely unattainable for somebody who's between 18 and 30, unless
we can turn 5 into 1 in Australia.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was his compelling reason why. And there were other services. He had his heart set on Las Vegas. I didn't have a network there.
Right.
And he was doing his own. He was an entrepreneur, owned a tech company, and basically said, I gave him some advice, and I haven't really heard from him since. But discovery, that is a big part of why does somebody want to go into this, because there is some time and effort that's involved. It's not just invest in an apartment building and now you're upgrading to the new model Porsche, right? So step 2 is structure, right? You've got to have the right structure. Are you a C corp? There's some instances on the commercial side where you might want to be a corporation, or right. are you an LLC or a limited partnership? If you want to play a real big game, are you a REIT? Is that something you want to do?
Right.
So structure is important, right? It offers you protection, tax advantage, and you're really planning for future success by focusing on the structure. Now, you go back to the team, it's in line with the first 2 players. I believe everybody in real estate has to recruit for their team. Number 1 is an accountant. They'll keep you accountable. They're the number people. Number 2 is, whether you like them or not, you're going to need to have a real estate lawyer or a contract lawyer or somebody that can help you with the structure. And right. Generally speaking, I have found that the real estate accountant and the real estate lawyer know each other in every market in the world, right?
Right.
So that's sort of the progression of of the 5-step method. Then you have the sourcing, right? You got to go out, you got to find the property. So do you need bird dogs? Do you need marketers? Are you doing your marketing? You need a direct mail guy. Who do you need on your team? Do you need a website? Do you need a VA? Like, who do you need on your team to make this work? Generally, if you're just starting out, you need yourself. And if you're not a licensed realtor or real estate agent, you're going to need to find one, right? Or a
Right.
wholesaler, or somebody that you've vetted and you feel is going to be able to deliver what it is you want, right?
Right.
And then you've got to sort of follow through with that first, second, 100th purchase, and then you got to measure it, right? You got to measure it against your math, or your pro forma, or your calculator, or whatever you're using to determine whether this acquisition or this investment was successful or not, right? Yeah, everybody's different, but that's just a step in my 5-step method. And then step number 5 is to replicate it. Right? You got to grow. You've got to scale. One deal is just the beginning. Deal one's just the beginning for some, and some people might elect to discover that they need to have 10 duplexes. Other people may discover that those 10 duplexes are the catalyst into their first 100-unit apartment building, right?
Right.
So, I mean, everybody's different, but this is really just a framework that I used for people to understand that it wasn't, for me, it was never about how many houses can I sell you for your, this amount of money you have. It's
right.
In order for me to be effective, right? We've got to look. So, like in Phoenix back in the day, do you want 2 houses in central Phoenix, or do you want 1.5 houses a little farther out in an area where you'll probably see it's a little more to get in, but you're going to get a little bit more out, right?
Right. Better appreciation.
And so there's just always that balance, right? Capital growth or cash flow, and where does it fit for you and your strategy?
That's a really good point. Good point. I love it. So what's next for John Carney?
Great question. I'm in the development game right now, in the multifamily management as well. So the business I'm working in, the Landmark Companies here in Cleveland, we're modernizing. We're looking at the efficiencies and technology, and providing the best community experience for our residents. So right now, I'm sort of focused on the sales systems and marketing systems for our apartment communities, and what do we offer our what can we offer residents that's a point of difference in the market.
That's really good. I love that. Now, are you primarily focused on the Cleveland market, or do you branch out any?
For the moment, we're in Cleveland. We haven't gone. We're in the downtown Cleveland area,
Right.
and so some of the buildings that we own and operate were historic warehouse conversions back in the late '90s. There was no, there are no swimming pools in the community rooms and the amenities that a new construction property coming out in some of the ring suburbs or ring parts of the market are able to do. So we have to compete for those tenants, right? So we can upgrade units, and we can upgrade our amenities, and we can really focus on service. So I think service is a big point of difference in the market, and we hang our hat on that. For example, we had our monthly management meeting today, and we're talking about suite turns and making sure all our suites are market ready, right? And then the question was, are you still able to keep on track with our every maintenance call? We try and answer every maintenance call, 24 hours or less, but that really means same day, right? So our team, everything's on iPad. So maintenance calls, leaky faucet, clogged toilet. There's only so many things that can happen in an apartment. So
Sure.
We want to provide good service, and we want to be able to get in and get out when people are at work and not disturb them.
That's awesome, man. That's good stuff. So, John, you got a lot going on, man. You've taught us a lot. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, follow you, see what's going on, I know you have a podcast as well. So how would they reach out to you?
Look, probably the best way to reach me is by email, which is, jc@johncarneyonline.com. I'm available by text and if you really want to get me, I'm on Eastern Standard Time, even though I have a Colorado phone number, but my cell phone's 970-390-3595. And, I'm happy to talk with anyone about joint ventures on multifamily deals, or if you got a question about, the cash flow multiplier or building your team, I'll schedule some time to chat with you.
Awesome, man. That's very generous of you to give out your cell phone number. I don't even give mine out.
You know what? On my podcast, I'll plug that, right? So the Real Estate Locker Room Show, keeping in line with real estate as a team sport. But I've got a lot of guests that are giving out their cell phone numbers, so I'll do the same thing.
That's awesome. That sounds good, man. Hey, I really appreciate you being on. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys, for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure and share and like and follow and give us some feedback. And I really would appreciate that. And thank you guys so much for watching. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Brain Pick a Pro Show. Thanks a lot, everybody. See you later. See you, John.
Thanks, Larry. Have a great day.
You too.